Good morning, my lovely people. It is another beautiful morning in Thailand, and as you can see, I'm back on the blacktop, not on the mountain today. In fact, I'm on my way into town and I'm going to pretend to be civilized for a few days and catch up with a few people. I am riding the CBR, my little blacktop beastie, and it occurred to me that I really haven't talked about this bike yet. Now, northern Thailand is a road rider's dream. It's just twisties for days, and so having a sports bike up here is an absolute pleasure. My sensible excuse to myself when I bought this bike was that I needed a bike to get around. One must commute from place to place. However, as we all know, it is not really necessary to commute from place to place on a CBR650F. You can do it on a Honda Wave just as well. But here's the thing, life is short and motorbikes are fun, and when this little deal came into my life, I just could not say no. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was the best investment I could make in my mental health at the time. So going back about a year ago in the middle of the pandemic, still stuck in Thailand, KTM stuck in Cambodia, borders closed, can't get to my bike, can't continue my journey, can't do what I love. I was feeling seriously disempowered and missing my independence, and that is a real trigger for my PTSD. I don't know if you know that I have PTSD, but now you do. Now, of course, riding motorcycles is not a magical cure, but it certainly alleviates the symptoms in a really wonderful way. It's the kind of activity which brings you forcefully back into the present, body and mind working together, adrenaline, endorphins, all of it happening at once to put you in this flow state. And that is an absolute delight, as well as an absolute relief. And so back to this lovely, lovely bike. Not only is it sexy as hell and goes fast as you like, it also has an upgraded rear shock, it's got a power commander, it's got a bunch of modifications which make it particularly lovely to ride, as well as the essential of all modifications, a flip-up number plate. Because frankly, it is the kind of bike which tempts you to do bad things. Having said that, I actually ride way more conservatively on this bike than I did on all the smaller bikes that I was riding over the past few years. After all, this bike is expensive, fully fared, and it's heavy. When it comes to stopping, physics is not on my side. In a place like Thailand, where dogs, chickens, grandmas, and small children are frequently on the road, not to mention a Hilux is always going to be on the wrong side of the road as you come around a blind corner, and another Hilux will always be doing a U-turn in front of you on the highway. So 650 cc's is really plenty of bike for this part of the world. And then you add into the mix the fact that all of the best roads are twisty as hell, so you're not really needing a whole lot of that straight line speed. Now, I got a Honda this time because here in Thailand they are cheap to buy and they are cheap to maintain. A lot of the parts are made here in Thailand and there's a big dealer presence here. So even for the big bikes, which are less common here, it's still a pretty good financial investment to go with a Honda over pretty much any other brand. Now, the bike feels super planted. It has buckets of power. The handling is not super light. You need to engage your core muscles and you need to ride this bike pretty purposefully to get it into those tight spaces exactly where you want it to be. But I absolutely love the forward sports position. I always have. People always complain about, oh, it makes their back sore and stuff. But for me, I always say, look, just switch on your core. You shouldn't be putting that weight on your wrist. You shouldn't be putting that weight on your back. Switch on your core and you will be fine. The weight distribution on this bike is way forward. You have a lot of weight over your front wheel, which is good. And it feels really, really planted, especially when you reef the throttle. and go for gold. A totally different feeling from this bike's cousin, which would be the CB650R. That bike has just completely different weight distribution, much to my surprise. I thought they would be fairly similar, but no. One feels like a bike for in town, and this bike feels like it's designed to go fast on back roads where there's no one around. I do notice the heaviness of the handling of this bike a bit when it's raining and the road is really slippery, but at the moment we have beautiful clear weather like you can see, so the Rosso 2s are just absolutely sticking to the road and giving me massive confidence. When I first bought this bike, I vowed that I was going to spend no money on it, mostly because when I bought this bike, then there was no money. However, I had mismatched coloured light bulbs in the front of the bike. The middle bulb was yellow coloured and the side bulbs were white LEDs. And it bothered my friend so much when he looked in his rearview mirror that he actually bought me a new LED light bulb for the main headlight, just so that he didn't have to look at the mismatched colouring in his mirrors. So that was really the only upgrade I've done apart from putting decent rubber on this bike. When I got it, the tires on it were about 4 or 5 years old and they still had plenty of tread, but they were starting to dry out badly in this climate, and I got really sick of going sideways on a 220 kilo bike. So I did eventually drop the coin on the Rosso 2s, and what a wonderful decision. I can actually say that I have never in my life regretted buying good tyres. And the same thing goes for the KLX. So remember I put the Michelin Enduro mediums on the KLX, and everyone was looking at me like I was completely mad putting these expensive tyres on this cheap bike. But I tell you what, when I was out there on the mountain for 4 days last week, I did not regret that for a minute. When you're on the side of a mountain and you're trying to get started again on a goat track and you've got washouts on either side and gravity is trying to kick your ass, there is no better feeling than that moment when you feel those tires hook up. Oh yes, indeed. Anyway, it's maintenance time for the KLX. It's getting its slightly toasted clutch looked at. I am still unsure on the story there. Of course, everyone says it must have just been my bad riding, but I would have thought that sometime in the last 20 years, if I was so bad at riding, I would have toasted at least one other clutch before. But anyway, we shall see. Now, if you're still with me, I want to say thank you. And also, you may be interested in the fact that I have just launched my own proper website. So instead of being a WordPress hosted blog, I now have my own domain. It's bikeadonia.com, as you might have guessed. Please forgive me for the couple of ads you may see from time to time on that website. A girl has to put petrol in the tank. Now, my next topic of the blog is going to be my little 3-day survivalist adventure when our easy enduro plans turned hard enduro in those mountains behind Pai. I kind of glossed over the gory details in my video because I like to keep videos upbeat and people have short attention spans, but if you're in for all the gory details, then do log on to my blog and check that out when it's up. Anyway, that's enough old school motovlogging for now. Next episode, we will be back to the usual footage of thrills and spills in the jungle. Stay well, have fun, and I will catch you later.